I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the Town Finance Committee for Tuesday, April 5th, 2022. Our first item is a call to order. Second item is those present. Could you please call the roll, Colette?
Certainly. Councilor Slattery?
Here.
Councilor Johnson? Councilor Anderson?
Here.
Okay. Item 3 is approval of the minutes for February 1st, 2022. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Councilor Slattery?
Yes.
Councilor Anderson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Item 4 is a discussion of the budget process and to review the schedule for the FY23 budget adoption process. We've been provided a draft calendar, which should look familiar to everyone. It's very similar in format, if not identical to what we did last year. John, I know you were on the Finance Committee last year. This is a new assembly of the Finance Committee with me as chair and Ken joining us in the future. He was unable to be here today, but he will round out our committee moving forward. And so basically, we just kind of wanted to give this some airtime and make sure that the dates and the general flow and schedule are going to work for both council and for staff in terms of presentations. Beyond that, I think that's my share of teeing it up.
Yeah, so if I could, in the proposed budget, we did propose a schedule. What you're seeing on the screen here is slightly revised. We did have an extra week, a fifth week kind of embedded here. So we're able to frankly swap out next week for the week of May 3rd. And we confirmed with the school department and the public safety folks that that's fine with them. So that seemed like a good switch. I know Chairperson Siler will not be here next week. And so
Hold on, just a second, Tom,
oh, I beg your pardon, I can back up and say that again.
please.
Okay, in the proposed budget book, we did propose a schedule for the Finance Committee review process. Upon further reflection and really understanding people's vacation schedules and availability and such, we were able to just swap out 1 week for another. So what was scheduled previously for next week, we've simply plugged in for the week of May 3rd. So the school department and public safety, that would be police, fire, and EMS, is scheduled for May 3rd, and really nothing else is affected at this point. So we'd look for your confirmation that that works for your schedule. And again, we've confirmed on our side that everyone can meet the new schedule.
Okay, so as Tom mentioned, we've removed the April 12th meeting, which I know was a conflict. It actually turned out to be a conflict for both of us. And so that has been resolved by creating the Tuesday, May 3rd meeting. I know that you had mentioned to me yesterday that you have a potential conflict with Tuesday, April 26th.
Yep.
Is there any option to move the Tuesday, April 26th meeting to Monday, April 25th?
I have to look at the calendar because I don't know if planning will be affected.
Okay,
If we do it at 4, typically that's okay. Planning wouldn't be until 6 at the earliest, probably 7. So I'm going to say that we can do that switch if it's a 4 o'clock start.
That would be helpful. I did book my flight, and I
Okay.
think I have to leave at like noon on the 26th.
okay,
Okay, so we just make that Monday instead of Tuesday that week.
that's much appreciated.
Mhm. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and it's general government, so it's basically Ruth and I. So we can make it, can't we?
Yeah.
Ruth, thank you very
Yes,
much.
thank you.
I haven't checked my schedule, but I have nothing more important than this.
If it turns out that that does not work,
It'll be fine.
But
you
now
know,
you have the 26th from 4 to 7 free. Hopefully it doesn't fill up with something else.
I'm sure it will.
Yeah.
So the general cadence here, you know, we're using this as our set the table meeting. But then, you know, when we get back the week of April 19th, we're going to begin our in-depth department meetings. As somebody who went through this process last year and had the opportunity to meet with each department, just looking at this overall list, do you feel like this is was this manageable for the Finance Committee last year in terms of which pairings of which departments work together.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, I feel like this works in terms of the bucketing. My only thought, and I know, Tom, you mentioned you already met with the school board, but since we have the joint workshop and public hearing on the 4th, I just worry if the other counselors may want to watch or participate in that discussion, since they fall one after the other. They might not have had the opportunity to watch and listen. So just throwing it out there as a suggestion of, is it possible to swap the items on the 19th, April 19th and the 3rd, so that we can do school and public safety a little bit earlier?
The
Vacation.
reason we can't swap that is
Okay.
because the school department's on vacation that week.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, this calendar gets really
We
tight
had,
real
we
quick,
had, we
doesn't
had
it?
thought that,
Okay.
and for that reason, we specifically scheduled
Okay.
non-school department the week of the 19th.
Okay, so we just might want to just make sure the other counselors know if they want to.
For that matter, I might suggest that we do public safety first on the 3rd. And if you run out of time, because there's a lot there between
Yeah,
police, fire, EMS, and school. Since you're convening with the Board of Education the next night, if there's a need to kind of carry on,
that's true.
you can spill over into the next night.
Sure,
Mhm.
yeah, I like that suggestion.
Incidentally, we're planning on doing the joint audit presentation that night too, just to
Okay.
be efficient with,
Okay.
gathering the two bodies. And then we have a joint workshop and public hearing on the budget that night too.
Okay. That makes sense then.
Yeah, so you can add, John, to your calendar, Wednesday, May 4th, we're gonna add the audit presentation.
Yep, we'll modify the full master calendar just to include that piece on. And if you don't mind, we'll speak to the school and also public safety folks and just switch them in place that their places that evening.
Mhm.
I'm sure that's acceptable.
Any other thoughts on the calendar?
The only thing on the count, I mean, I thought last year went really well, and I wasn't worried about school and public safety because I felt like Chief Moulton and Chief Thurlow, or the deputy chief, were really buttoned up.
Yep.
I know this will be the first time for the two new chiefs, so just, do you think they might want more time, Tom, or do you think that we'll be okay?
I think we'll be okay. I
Okay.
really do. We are, like we've done the last couple of years, we've got a standard slide deck,
Mhm.
probably 2 or 3 slides that will be in common, just so we can keep a kind of a consistency and a cadence.
Yeah.
So that will help structure them, frankly. I'm sure they'll have their support staff there to help support them in the discussion. So I really don't anticipate if, I think they're both very capable of
Yeah, okay.
of handling things.
One of the things that we did last year that I thought helped, and it probably helped make the meetings more efficient too, was we created that spreadsheet where we kind of were
Oh,
able to
yep.
put in our questions in advance. I don't recall how soon in advance, like,
Yeah.
was it a week in advance? We tried to get those in, so it gave the staff enough time to kind of do some answering, because I think that really helped us narrow in or dig a little
That's
bit
right.
deeper.
Yeah, I'll have to look back at that. Yeah, I think a week's time would be ample time for us.
Okay.
If that doesn't put too much pressure on you.
I think we should be okay. I mean, essentially, we just need to try and make sure we have it in a few days in advance.
Yep. So as I recall, it was probably a shared Google Doc that everyone had access to, and you could just put your questions in. I
Yeah.
think we would try to answer them
Mhm.
as we could, real time.
Yeah, and I think it will help, what that will help is for the roundtables, like that could be not only our document, but any questions we get from roundtables, we can add those in so that it's just one single place.
Right,
And
maybe
even
that's,
some of the questions we get at roundtables.
maybe that's
might
the
be-
start of your FAQs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe not all of them, but selected ones.
Yeah.
Liam, I assume you're listening? Do you,
I am.
not only listening, but
Hi,
you're
Liam.
attentive.
Yeah, of course. I did just have a lapse and showed some of my email, but other than that, yeah, I'm attentive.
So do you recall how we handled that? It was a shared Google Doc that we,
Yeah, I was. I believe that Councillor Anderson and former Councillor Gleistein, I think it might have been actually the prior budget fiscal year. I think we had a shared drive that they went in and populated their questions, and then we opened it up to staff and we coordinated the responses to those questions. I think that's what happened. So it's not a lift to get a shared document up and running now, and we can start populating those questions immediately.
good, we'll do that.
Yeah.
You'll see it and we'll send you obviously a link when it's up and running.
Right, perfect. And I think that that's really good insight, that it will certainly overlap and maybe inform those budget
Yeah.
roundtables too.
And occasionally when we get emails, just like popping
Yep.
in those questions, 'cause I know we'll get like that. I did actually reference that last year when we got some consistent questions from the public where, the town staff did a really good job responding. So that was just a really good practice, I thought, from last year.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you reminded it. We can get that up and running
Perfect.
right away.
Check that off my list. In terms of one other question I had for you, Tom, was where does a discussion of the TIF revenue and kind of how that, because this is new to the budget process, so where will that fall
Yeah, the
in?
good news is it only appears in two places. And so I'll make a distinct effort to draw your attention to that. One, we've created a new revenue line for SEDCO. And the rest of the money comes in two different revenue lines in debt service. So Ruth and I will cover that territory on the 25th.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
I think in the future, it's going to get a little more complicated,
Yeah.
just as more TIF revenues are available. We choose to use it for more varied reasons.
Yep.
But this year, just given the amount of resources and it just made sense to apply it to debt and SIDCO only.
Mhm.
I know there was council interest in having that discussion when
Mhm.
we were discussing the capture rate. And so I
Yep.
wanted to make sure that that is clear to council when that conversation is happening and.
Yeah, I did include Exhibit 6 that gives you a little deeper dive on that, and we can reference that when we get to it. But in the meantime, you could look at it. It's fairly self-explanatory. Yeah, Exhibit 6 on page 193.
Okay.
But again, and in the future, I think we'll have to have a very detailed exhibit because I think there'll be just a lot of ins and outs that we need to account for.
Sure.
Incidentally, we did hear back from DECD a few very, very minor questions and comments on the submission we had for the downtown TIF.
Yep.
And we've already responded, and I expect we'll hear very shortly. So I'm just comforted knowing that I've made some assumptions in my proposed budget that those would be approved, and I'm now comforted that they will be certainly in time.
Oh, perfect.
Yep. Interestingly, no questions or comments on it was number 8, you might recall. It was the option of potentially using TIF funds to offset lease, construction costs and lease premises. That's the one that I thought would get the most attention.
Yeah.
And I think it's really because Shauna spent so much time up front.
Yeah.
Understanding and so what was submitted was directly in line with the feedback she received. So everything looks very positive there.
That's great news.
Yep. So I don't know how formal you want to be. I think we know what the schedule is, but do you want to take a vote on the change schedule and we'll make it so and publish it? I think we can replace it in the document so everyone has the right schedule to look at.
Yep. Do I have a motion to accept the proposed calendar?
I move that we accept the proposed calendar with the edits discussed today.
Second? Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Can we have a little bit of a conversation though on approach for the capital equipment and projects piece? Because again, I think last year, I don't recall exactly how that one went, but it feels like we have a lot of things in the pipeline. And I'm just curious, Tom, on your thoughts or how you were thinking about approaching it this year. And is there something you might want to do slightly differently just to make sure we're having some deeper conversations about all the major capital projects that are planned, not just for 23, but like maybe even looking through the whole 5 years? Because I think in the budget, sometimes it's a little bit light on those out year
It is. Yep.
projects, but just having more context, I think will help us look at it in totality to really kind of say, is this aligned?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have all the answers in terms of the long range, particularly the high value capital items.
Yeah.
The library is moving forward. They do have it appears they're coming in 2 pieces, one starting next fiscal year and then the big one following that. In terms of school and community center, which are the other 2, I'm not even sure if I guess the balls are in the air, but I'm not sure where they're going to land at this point. And consequently, the CIP, the 5-year outlook is kind of silent, not knowing where those two projects stand, other than some initial money for a community center. So this is a hugely important conversation. I'm not sure if you can have it because we don't have all the information yet.
Yeah.
But your point's well taken. Historically, we would take CIP requests up with department requests as the department head was here, and we can do that if you like. I'd like to suggest that the materials provided in the budget, the narrative associated, should be fairly complete and should be fairly direct. Those would be things, if you have particular questions as we prepare for the next week's review, that would be certainly something to give us a red flag on. But I hope most of the stuff is fairly self-explanatory.
Yeah. I haven't had a chance, honestly, to dig into it yet to know, but again, like if I were to do a quick scan, like it might be just something to consider in the presentations, like definitely highlight 23, but if there's anything maybe over a certain dollar threshold that's not standard equipment or replacement, that we just kind of take a minute to just highlight what it is, because I don't think that would necessarily probably be in the budget book. So that way, again, we're just getting some of that context as part of those conversations.
And some of the other projects, I think some you'll be familiar with, some you're seeing for the first time, or you funded some of the preliminary engineering and consulting work. Now they're coming to the construction phase.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll talk to department heads. I'll have them prepared and maybe provide a slide or two in their presentations, just to, if there's anything on their CIP requests that we should spend a little more time on.
I think that's always helpful too, like you just said, to get the historical context too, because we might see something that's already had multiple years of funding in the past that might not be in there. So just knowing like what's been done, where is it now? Maybe it's in 3 years out and it's this project, and how it all kind of like flows, just so that we have that understanding.
Yeah.
John, I asked this question only because I know that you're the liaison to the library. I've been remiss in not following up with Nancy and better understanding what I'll say the strategy is in kind of this two pieces. So for instance, it's my understanding they want to seek voter approval in November. I'm just not sure for what. Is it the first piece or is it all of it?
My understanding, and I think it's still getting worked through, but I think they were planning to go and ask for the full amount that's needed, but also reference the fact that it will be somewhat funded through donations.
Okay.
And I think that's
It would make sense. I think they should go to the voters once. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of if they're prepared to make the full ask as soon as this November. That's my expectation.
Yeah.
So I'll talk to Nancy and Bill and make sure that they, I'm sure
Did that
they're prepared
come
to
in?
cover that territory.
Did that come in the CIP? Because I saw when you did the presentation, just the 9 million or a $9 million number, and I wasn't sure, like that seemed low. Like I just expected.
Yeah, that for the library, there's only about $2.5 million being requested for FY23.
Okay.
And then the remainder in FY24.
So that's just more like when
That's
when it
definitely-
hits, or
I think it's when they expect to actually spend the money as opposed to when they need it. But my expectation is they'll be making the full request November 22 for the full amount.
That's
So
definitely a conversation to be had. And
Yeah.
this actually gives me the opportunity to clear up something that happened at the Council Corner Live the other night. Councilor Hamel suggested that the library was definitely going to referendum, and you can hear me in the video and it's kind of weird. And I cringe now because I'm like, no, veto, no. I want to be clear. I was not vetoing the library going to referendum unilaterally. I was more poking at Councilor Hamel's assertions without it having gone through the proper channels at
Yeah.
Finance Committee. And so if anyone watches that.
well, just a good example of that is last year we approved Herd Park at budget, but then I think town staff decided to pull that out from going to referendum so that we could do the Parks and Facilities Master Plan. So just because we agree with it on budget
Yes.
may not necessarily mean as things advance in August. I think typically when we decide what goes on referendum, will everything show up, or things that might be approved might come off because of other circumstances. So
yeah, so really to the point that you raised, the initial point, for the schools piece, they're not asking for any additional funding. I believe they have sufficient funds over the last couple of fiscal years to continue what they need to do over the next year. Nor is there any amount in the out years. So if someone is just to pick this up, they would be totally unaware of a major massive
Correct.
capital project in the wings. So we do desperately need to have that larger conversation around how we're going to move these.
Mhm.
So at the very least, I will alert my staff, and I'll talk to the school department and library as well, to be prepared to speak to any of their kind of unique high dollar item capital items. And I'm
Mhm.
certain the library, that's going to be the
Yep.
focus of their presentation. I hope so.
Yep.
Yeah, great. And that makes the most sense to me in terms of placing value on those items too,
Mhm.
because it's one thing for us to sit and discuss capital investments, but it always means something more to hear it from the
Mhm.
department that's making the request, I think.
Good suggestion. If I could, I know you were 2/3 of the communications committee.
Mhm.
So there is the intention of having budget roundtables.
Mhm.
I saw in your notes. Just want to better understand what expectations there are for staff to help support that initiative.
Sure. So you have yourself the dream team here. We are the finance committee, and the three of us are also the
That's right.
communications
Oh,
committee.
that's right.
So if at any point for our town staff, we are blending the two committees too much and you're not aware of something that happened at communications, and by all means stop us, because I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot of when did we say that? Where did we
Yeah,
have that
agree.
conversation happening over the next couple of weeks? But you're the communications chair, so I'll let you
So-
speak to roundtables.
Yeah, so in terms of staff support, what we talked about yesterday was really just logistical support and
Mhm.
potential note taking. So
Sure.
we said we would leverage the deck you put together as like our basis for
Okay.
what we may want to like kick things off with, but then generally just open it up for conversation. And we talked about if there is a town staff member available to help with when we're doing hybrid stuff, managing the equipment and the technology
Mhm.
to help us, and then potentially capturing just the notes to inform the FAQs that we want to develop as a result, which the counselors will have some responsibility to, but just having that other person who can
Yep.
help
Okay.
capture notes. I think that was really it.
Yeah.
And then of course, based on those FAQs
Yep.
for town staff
Yeah,
to
completing those.
respond.
Yeah, we're fine. We're pleased to help support you. It would be helpful, I think, for all involved to lock down those dates, just so
Yeah.
we have something to work toward.
We asked Liam
We-
if he could take the lead on just kind of giving us dates and just
Okay.
saying those are the dates. And
Well,
again, hopefully-
Liam's been in interviews all day, so I haven't had a chance to.
The
debrief with him.
discussion that was had at communications was we scaffolded kind of what we were hoping
I see.
with the school board, because it was a joint meeting. And so the six of us kind of said, like, this would be our ideal, in terms of location and length of time and, rough
Format.
Mhm.
format.
Yep.
And then rather than sit there and say, well, does the 27th at 3, like we said to Liam, I
Okay.
think,
I'll work with Liam.
can
We'll get you
just-
some proposed dates.
Yeah.
Mhm. It does.
Yeah, just to round out what the expectations were, we did talk about one virtual meeting, one in-person meeting, and two hybrid meeting. I'm sorry, one hybrid, two in-person, one completely virtual. We're gonna try to hit a weekend day, which is probably gonna be the 23rd, which is a Saturday. We'll have one during the day and again, two of the evening. So it's just about matching those things up. And again, it was between the 19th and the 30th. So that kind of that 2-week period is when we'll try to find some dates. And we may very well work around other committee meetings. I know we have that week of the week of the 18th. We have council that week, we have ordinance, we have finance. So we may look to piggyback on some of those things or avoid them. I'm not sure yet, but Tom, you and I can talk tomorrow.
Yeah, good. So we can
Yeah.
certainly talk about that. And last question, venue, do you want to vary the venue?
We talked about trying to use the public safety building if it's available. Since it's a nice venue. And so we said we could try that for maybe one or two. And then again, I think just whatever's convenient and available.
Yep.
Again, like we don't want to, create anything that's more work for people. So, even though yesterday we talked about doing the public safety building, if that creates additional burden on town staff compared to doing it just here where it's more
No,
convenient.
but
we can be
presumably you
flexible.
want these taped, so you have a
Mhm.
recording of them. So that, I guess with the owl, we're pretty much mobile. We can go wherever.
Okay.
Historically, that's been a challenge. If we don't have the audio video
Mhm.
system, we just don't tend to capture good of either.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I think our technology is overcoming those challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, staff will work. I think by the end of the week, perhaps we'll be able to give you a proposal and start to share those
Yeah.
dates out.
It might even be a matter of just like, as this gets updated, if you guys can include those somewhere in here, just so that they're captured. Because again, I think we said whatever dates Liam proposes, we're just gonna run with.
Yeah,
and
we're
we'll have
gonna
a
make it
counselor and a
work.
School board there,
Yes.
so,
Such control, Liam.
yeah.
Don't abuse the authority now.
Never
Again, I
would.
And I would say we asked for 4, but if, just because the calendar seems so condensed now, if we need to just
Yep.
go down to 3 or 2, like, that, I feel like ideally we would do 4, but if we need to narrow it, again, leave it to Liam.
Yep.
And you, Tom, to decide like what's gonna fit.
I think we'll try to schedule 4 out. You may find that there's not much interest in activity and it's not worth your time, but
Mhm.
let's get 4 on the calendar so we
Yeah.
have that to work from. We can work backward. All right, we'll get a proposal out by the end of the week.
Okay, and then once we have that, communications, it can be a joint communications finance committee communication to the rest of the council to gauge their interest. Because this was kind of our initiative, we had committed ourselves to these things, but obviously, other counselor involvement and school board member involvement is
Mhm.
certainly welcome.
Good.
Even
Thanks
though
for the
we're-
clarity
we're
on that.
joint finance
No,
communication, so
it's just- We're just all bled together
Yeah.
now. With that, do you have any other questions or requests?
I don't. I'm glad we have an extra week to dig into stuff a little bit more.
I can't promise I'm gonna bring my budget book with me, guys.
I thought that was gonna be your carry-on.
There's Wi-Fi in the airplane and you can,
Yeah.
just saying, you can probably see it online if you need.
I want you to picture like how sad that would be, me
It would be-
walking through the airport with an
will
earbud,
lose
listening
huge
to
respect
an
for you, April, if
interview,
you do
auditor
that.
interview with my budget book under one arm. Item number 4 is public comment. Is there any public comment? Liam, do we have anybody attending?
We have one person in attendance. I'm not sure if they would like to speak. If they would, just raise your hand. I'm happy to bring you in, Nancy. Going once, going twice. I think that's okay. Move on.
Okay, great. Thank you, Liam. Anything else from the town manager?
No,
Okay,
no, thank you.
item number 5 is adjournment. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second. Yes.
Yes.